Tom Godden. I'm an enterprise strategist with AWS, and I'm really excited to spend some time with you today to delve into what we consider the start of a new technology revolution. I'll try to avoid the hype, and I'll leave you with some insights on how to capitalize with advances on machine learning and, in particular, generative AI. We'll cover what generative AI is and why it's a hot topic and how it can be used to address business needs. And I'll do this through lessons from the past and help us consider how to approach technology responsibly and what strategic choices you should consider and what you can do right now.
Welcome to a presentation that was initially destined to delve into the fascinating realms of neural networks and advanced math. But hold that thought. We've got something that just might pique your interest even more. How do these captivating concepts move beyond clever parlor tricks and become tools that shape industries and drive success? In this rapidly evolving landscape, one thing is certain. What might have been clever and interesting before could be the beginning of something extraordinary. History, however, has taught us that realizing the value of transformational technologies is not a linear process. It requires leadership, cultural shifts, new operating models, and new skills. In this session, my colleague will share lessons learned from past technological transformations, how leaders can apply them to generative AI today, and how AWS is taking a differentiated approach to democratize generative AI.
Thank you very much there, Evelyn. Really enjoyed that introduction. So as we begin going, we find that the terms artificial intelligence and machine learning are used very liberally. And I don't want to fall into the trap that we fell into with digital transformation, one where everyone agrees that it's important, but we can't all agree what it actually means. You see, the seeds of generative AI and artificial intelligence have existed for decades. Growth has been propelled by the cloud, by cost-effective, scalable compute, by a proliferation of data, and by the rapid advancement in the areas of algorithms and advanced mathematics. It's led us to this truly exciting inflection point, one where we believe most customer experiences within applications will be reinvented by machine learning. And you may have seen examples like this that help us understand what this is. If we started with a sentence fragment, that's one small step forward, and I polled all of you in the audience, what do we think would come next? Many of us would say man. Many of us maybe would say people. A few of you out there might have said horse. That's a little bit interesting. But we can use generative AI to have a probability distribution to predict what the next likely outcome is. And the relationship between those events allows us to complete something like this, where we get Neil Armstrong's famous quote, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." But generative AI is much more than this simple predictive text. Let's start with an understanding of where generative AI fits. AI can be used to describe any system that can be replicated, that can mimic human intelligence. Most AI use cases are looking at a probabilistic outcome, making a prediction or a decision, much like we saw with that Neil Armstrong quote, where we want to have a high degree of human certainty and certain judgment and mimics human behavior. Almost all AI systems today are created using the next section, machine learning. Machine learning uses vast amounts of data to create a decision logic in what's known as a machine learning model. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning that uses a technique known as deep neural networks to get the relationships between many pieces of data to derive that outcome. And generative AI, finally, is a subset of deep learning. It's built on these foundational models that are trained on massive amounts of data. Maybe another way to look at this is through the lens of the complexity of the inputs and the outputs. You see, machine learning has a set of inputs that predict that output of an algorithm, but very finite, a small number of inputs that give you that small number of outputs, like maybe predicting the cost of a house based upon square footage. 20 years ago, a subset of machine learning, deep learning, took more complicated inputs and still give you that single output, like maybe detecting whether or not it's a cat in your favorite picture or not. And now, more recently, that step change with generative AI is taking in complex inputs, large quantities of text, and it's creating those complex outputs, those blogs, those images, and engaging in dialogue. And as you can see with generative AI, there are many choices, from the highly specific and costly types of approaches to the straightforward and more less expensive approaches in working with it. You see, not everyone's going to need to build that new foundational model, nor should they. And let's dive into when and how you might take a couple of these different approaches. You start building your own foundation model might be appropriate in certain scenarios where you need a pre-trained model and it does not exist your current needs. Doing so will allow you to input more information from your domain knowledge within your organization. Apply that proprietary information and gain fine control over the model. But go into this with eyes wide open. It can be costly and complicated and will require significant specialized skills. As we move up the pyramid, we get to fine tuning, and it's a technique of generative AI used to adapt a pre-trained model to a specific task or domain. It involves taking a pre-trained model that has been trained over vast amounts of data and providing specific, more detailed task-oriented data sets to make it more specialized to a particular task. This can be helpful to provide more context or domain-specific knowledge, and it's much faster and less expensive than building your own foundation model from scratch, and oftentimes with even better results. The next is one I get asked a lot from organizations. How can I understand what it's going to answer? It seems like such powerful technology, but how do we maintain control? Retrieval augmented generation is a natural language processing framework that combines both retrieval-based and generative-based approaches to improve the quality and the relevance and predictability of outputs. As you can see, the retriever takes the input and queries the knowledge base of predetermined answers with specifically curated information, and then it's handed over to that foundation model to build that generative AI response. Kind of get your cake and eat it too with this one. And last is prompt engineering. It's the process of designing and constructing high-quality input instructions for generative AI models to elicit desired outputs. It involves carefully crafting the format and content of the input given to the model and to steer its behavior to generate specific responses. So as we look at this, we go, we're excited. We want to try these things. What do? There's exciting times ahead. But haven't we been here before? There's equally a fear of missing out going on and a sense of skepticism that comes with that new technology as much as there is excitement. But many initiatives fall flat and don't deliver the benefits we hoped. Most of the time, this has nothing to do with the technology itself. Many historic lessons we can learn from, we can adapt and change our approach and accomplish more based upon learning lessons from others. So let's start and do that. Throughout history, we've seen many technologies that have seemingly appeared out of nowhere, which have gone on to change economies and societies. But predicting these events normally has a long tail of unnoticed activity. One of the most fundamental changes we take for granted was the Gutenberg printing press. It took the limited production and distribution of rare written materials from the control of the few and put it into the hands of the many. It led to an explosion of knowledge across the globe. A few hundred years later, in 1879, we saw the introduction of electricity and the electric light bulb, followed a mere 100 years later by the same electricity being put to use powering early personal computers. The internet followed 2 decades later, opening up knowledge in a way comparable to that first printing press. And a fifth revolution saw access broaden with the launch of AWS in 2006, democratizing access to sophisticated technology globally, enabling invention on rapid scale with social media, with digitally native banks, with e-commerce. Each of these new revolutions you see has a set of lessons that actually repeat themselves. The first lesson takes us to the start of our history lesson, when technology really began to launch with that Gutenberg printing press. Some companies grew, you see, as we launched into new technologies by disintermediating traditional industries. Videos went from tape to online. People used the right technology. They understood the capabilities with these technologies to be able to launch new capabilities. The next lesson we have is needing a strong foundation of our organizations to build upon. The light bulb, you see, was initially viewed as a novelty. Thomas Edison invented it in order to demonstrate what was possible within the electricity. And it looked kind of nice for the holidays. And if you're like me, it created a lot of work for you around the holidays as you needed to light your street to keep up with everyone else in their beautiful houses. But in order to accomplish this, in order to do this, you needed that right foundation. Thomas Edison, before he could light New York City, needed to build his own power generators. And sometimes these things become what we call generally pervasive technologies. These generally pervasive technologies are things that are foundational for us to build everything else upon. And you got to get them right before you can get to those exciting next steps. Our next lesson that we talked about is that there will be skepticism and there will be hype. There will be excitement as we get forward in doing these. You see, the availability of books was a destabilizing threat to the church. This is the Council of Trent, and the Catholic Church was meeting to really be able to get control over information that became so ubiquitous and available to people. They were threatened by it. You see, we also have things like luminaries in the technology sector were initially skeptical about personal computers. Why would anyone need this at home? A statement I'm sure Steve Wozniak would love to have back. The same happened with the cloud. Why would a book-selling company go into the business of providing online storage and ultimately what we know now today to be cloud computing? The next lesson that we have is new skills enable work to be reimagined. Every revolution, whether agricultural, scientific, or industrial, has seen some skills become less valuable and new skills emerge and be even more in demand. Recently, according to McKinsey, agricultural employment in China went from 82% of all workers to just 13% in 50 years. You see, many jobs, which didn't exist 20 years ago, are thriving today. Cloud architects, data scientists, social media managers, they all resulted from the use of new technologies. And those organizations that identified and invested in those skills gained an early and sustainable advantage. But you see, it's not just about the new skills, it's about applying the technology to having us be able to change the way we work. You see, electricity and electric motors and electric lighting, they enabled assembly lines to be created. It allowed us to reimagine how factories were constructed. You see, work came to the workers and working hours could be extended safely. It truly transformed and changed again, not purely because of the technology, but by how the technology allowed us to reimagine our work. The fifth lesson is change brings new risks and new responsibilities. This pattern has been repeated throughout history. You see, we have the change of working practices and skills takes time. Ultimately, technology organizations rush to adopt this. People rush to embrace this as individuals. Businesses follow behind, rightfully understanding and working their way through this new technology. But regulations, public policy really, falls and trails behind this. Each time there's a balance sought between encouraging that commercial growth and ensuring that safety and fairness. And we need to get that right. It is worth us being thoughtful earlier about these considerations and these unintended potential consequences of new technology as opposed to waiting for later. One final lesson takes us back to that very beginning where we have value explodes from new ideas. More recently, what started as a simple way of ordering a book online, this is the very first Amazon.com webpage, became a more sophisticated global marketplace enabling millions of sellers access to customers and inventing ML-powered technologies such as Amazon Alexa. You see, machine learning has been applied in increasingly sophisticated ways across Amazon to enable experiences such as Amazon's Just Walk Out frictionless stores. All these ideas started small, but with one big vision of what could be. So artificial intelligence dominates the headlines. equally proclaimed as a positive revolution and an existential threat. So, what's a leader to do? There's little doubt we're on the verge of what is perhaps the most monumental technology boom today. It's a unique revolution in that technology can learn and improve itself over time. So, how can these lessons be applied so that you can be a success and avoid the traps of the past? So, let's start going through each one of these lessons. And let's start with those that succeed use the right tools. We believe the right tool for the job, and it's no surprise that we believe that it is powered by the cloud. AWS continues to innovate at pace around these services and at every level of the technology stack. We do this from the silicon the software runs on through the AI services available to the developers. We believe that Amazon Bedrock will be the easiest way to build generative AI applications. It will provide access to multiple foundation models through a fully managed, secure, private service that gives you the flexibility and the ability to customize models to your data. You can get started quickly with foundation models such as Amazon Titan for text and QA, Jurassic for language generation, or Claude for conversational text, or Stable Diffusion for all those exciting images that we see being generated. You see, we've had a long history of providing this choice. For instance, Amazon SageMaker Jumpstart is the machine learning hub where ML experts can discover, explore, and deploy pre-trained, publicly available, and proprietary foundation models. If you wish to create your own foundation models, Amazon SageMaker provides a managed infrastructure and tools to accelerate scalable, reliable, and secure model building, tuning, and development. But it's not just about using the right technology that's important. It's about using it the right way. You don't want to be training publicly available model for your competitors. There are a number of examples recently where a company has taken their competitive confidential information and used it with a public foundation model. Subsequently, this data has become accessible to others, including their competitors. This is a benefit of Bedrock. Customers can trust that their data will remain private and confidential as they tune that information to get that fine-tuning capability to be able to make more specific recommendations for their employees and for their customers. The second lesson is a strong foundation is required to succeed. Edison needed to build those power generators before he could take the next steps. In the excitement of technology, it's easy to forget that dependence on that strong foundation. All of these benefits of AI are at your disposal, but only if you have the foundations in place, and it starts with the cloud. Cloud enables that cost-effective data lakes, that sustainably provisioned compute, high-speed networking, and that consumption-based costing. So if you have not done so already, you need to accelerate your cloud journey. Some simple techniques work to address this need. Set bold goals. Inspire your organization. Come up with that North Star. Establish your principles for what good looks like and what your ambitions are. Ensure that you have a well-established cloud center of excellence to guide your teams and to keep harmony amongst your implementations. Gain experience by moving workloads quickly as possible to the cloud and bring in experienced providers. That next foundational element is you have to get your data foundation right. It's easy to focus on that new technology so much that you miss out that it's the tip of the proverbial iceberg. You see, many organizations have unwittingly fallen behind with their usage of data and technology. It might be a lack of data quality or siloed data. Maybe it's immature systems. Maybe it's just the general lack of mature, robust analytic capabilities. Now is the time to get these fundamentals right. A strong data foundation is crucial for generative AI. Data is your lifeblood, even more so with generative AI. You need to gather diverse data, ensure that it has high quality, where you understand its lineage and its versioning. You need to treat it as a product. You need to manage it. And you are going to need to get fast and consistent at doing this. And to do so, you need to automate everything with the management of your data. And lastly, we're dealing with enormous volumes of data. You need to have cost controls of FinOps practice in place to be able to manage those costs. The next lesson is there will be skepticism and there will be hype. Be careful here. I get the excitement, but ask the right questions. Does this problem need to be solved with generative AI? Is there a better way to do this? Don't be the hammer in search of a nail. Blockchain, anyone? Often what seems to be skepticism is often the fear of the unknown. People are uncomfortable. We have to acknowledge that any major change naturally creates fear. Our role is to help people overcome this. These stats can scare or motivate you depending on who you are and how you read them. I believe if done right, generative AI will free up our talented people to really focus on activities and outcomes meaningful to you and to them. But it does require acquiring new skills. And we typically, as individuals, have a primal reaction to this. But some basics can help us overcome these concerns. See, you have to understand people's unique perspectives, as we have indicated here. Some leap at the opportunity to learn something new. These early adopters, give them inspiration, give them space to learn and recognition for becoming those new experts. Next is that early majority group. They want to understand that you're really serious about this new technology. They are the ones who will drive that real momentum for change. And that late majority, they're fearful that they might not be needed anymore. They need your help to feel comfortable with this change and see what their new role might actually be. Our next lesson here is new skills enable work to be reimagined. And given it's a case of what skills are required rather than whether or not new skills are needed, there's no time like the present to train your teams. Ultimately, your success rests on whether or not you have the people who understand the potential of generative AI and whether they have the skills to do something about it. Starting now, incrementally, persistently develop these skills. Some of the skills that you're going to need are listed here. They range from skills in developing and scaling in the cloud, through being able to prepare data and fine-tune and test foundation models. But remember, it's easy to forget the soft skills that are so crucial to problem solving and are the key element to innovation. Cultivate those soft skills as well. We believe most organizations have the people they need, just not necessarily the skills, and we can help here. AWS Deep Racer is a fully autonomous race car powered by machine learning that has helped us educate over 320,000 developers globally. Training and certification courses, part of AWS Machine Learning University, are available, many of which are free. And in 2022, we announced the AWS AI and ML scholarships. Look into these information, help your team learn and train using these skills and capabilities from AWS. To build these skills, we need to also, though, rethink and reapproach how we work. Executives need to work with their teams and their HR leaders to determine how this should unfold. You need to take a strategic view to these skills within your workforce to know what skills you have and which ones you need. Unlike previous technology revolutions, I've never seen technology so quickly be applied to the roles filled by the highest earning, most educated, most creative people. This will affect everyone, but if done right, this will be a win-win for employees and employers. Take one example, the software developer. Each decade has seen the evolution in programming languages, abstracting developers further and further away from the inner workings of the microprocessor, putting more of their focus on delivering functionality securely for their organizations. Today, we see this next step of this evolution with the use of natural language as a way of coding. This is further enabled with Amazon Code Whisperer. Code Whisperer uses generative AI to allow developers to build faster while freeing them up to focus more on the creative aspects of coding. It uses a foundation model to radically improve developer productivity. It generates code suggestions in real time based upon developers' comments in a natural language. If you look at the typical highly skilled developer, reports show that at best, the average developer spends less than a third of their time developing, in some case, less than 5 hours a week. That's amazing to me. Time is taken up waiting for others, trying to find answers on the internet, copying code that might or might not be secure, that I'm sure they read the end user license agreement before they copied. Debugging, testing, and doing what developers love to do least, sitting in endless meetings. But with Code Whisper, we can reduce those dependencies. We can automate, we can add more value. Developer response to the preview has been overwhelmingly positive. During the preview, we ran a productivity challenge, and participants who used Code Whisper completed tasks 57% faster on average, and were 27% more likely to complete them successfully than those who didn't use Code Whisper. Customers like Accenture and Co Industries and SmugMug are using Code Whisper. Just last week, we pre-announced Code Whisperer Enterprise, which enables organizations to securely customize Code Whisper to generate organizational specific code recommendations based on their own internal repositories. And I'm excited for you to be able to begin to use that within your organizations. Our next lesson here is an important one. Understanding how change brings in new risks and new responsibilities. We expect the same with generative AI across the dimensions, including privacy, employment law, security, and model validation. By considering the implications of what technology could be to our customers and our employees, you can save your organization reputational harm and significant future rework while truly demonstrating customer centricity. You need to build a responsible AI program. A responsible AI program recognizes the threats that will come and that are coming. You see, poorly trained data can perpetuate biases and lead to bad decision making. A lack of control over training data can lead to abusive content being generated. Poor data, or even the deliberate manipulation of models, can lead to very convincing but factually inaccurate outputs we call hallucinations. These here are some of the common attributes to consider when building a responsible AI program. Almost all require human oversight, with AI augmenting human judgment, not replacing it. A good program goes beyond committee-based risk management by baking it into the culture of the organization. It focuses on training, on observability, on transparency, and on testing, and on testing, and on testing, and on testing. See, generative AI is different. It's continuing to evolve and grow and learn, and you need to have a program. It's not something that you're just going to deploy and be done with. You need a program to continue to test to make sure it's behaving as you expected. And our final lesson here, that value explosion. You see, generative AI is set to fundamentally transform everything from science to business to healthcare to society itself. And the positive impact on human creativity will be massive. Every role has that potential to be reinvented, but you need to light your first street right now, like Thomas Edison did, to find that first experiment. And to do so, look at this project life cycle. The most important aspect is to define the scope of what you want to do as accurately, but as narrowly as possible. Your next decision will be whether to train your own model, likely from scratch, or work with an existing model. You will likely start with an existing model. With your model in hand, the next step is to assess its performance and to carry out additional training via prompt engineering. Maybe use that fine-tuning or reinforcement learning with the human. Then you will evaluate and iterate until it works as expected. And finally, once you have that model that is meeting your performance needs and is well aligned, you can deploy it into your infrastructure and integrate it. And again, that last but very important step that will require additional resources is to continue to test, to continue to optimize, to continue to evaluate. You see, the act of lighting a street with electricity in the 1800s would have been beyond the realm of imagination for folks born 200 years before. We face that same challenge today. As ever, we encourage you to think big, really big, but get started quickly. Be stubborn about the change you want to drive and open-minded about what's possible, but impatient about getting going. As you look at those opportunities to select the right product, be driven by business value. Don't just do this because all the cool kids are doing it. Do it because you have a business opportunity, a business need. Don't look at this as just a way to cut costs. It can be, but it's also a way to grow and to offer new capabilities that we've never imagined. And go after the low hanging fruit. Find those impactful ideas like the items with Code Whisperer. Here are several other ideas across industry, maybe to inspire you as you look across multiple industries at exciting capabilities to find some of those low hanging fruit. And as we look across our 6 lessons here today, remember those that succeed use the right tools. The right tool for the right job is, the cloud, and we believe is centered on Amazon Bedrock. But you need that strong foundation of cloud capabilities and data capabilities. You need to help your people feel comfortable as they work through this with their skepticism, but help manage the hype and people getting over eager on this as well. You need those new skills to help invest and train people, and you need to use the technology to reimagine jobs done in the past. You need to understand that 5th lesson, those new risks and responsibilities, and implement a responsible AI program, not later. Do that today before you get going. And then you'll be positioned to get that value explosion so you can light your first street with generative AI. Thank you very much for your time here today to go through these lessons from history as we look at what we believe to be a very exciting next technology generation.